Namaste OpIndia viewers. Today in conversation with series we are with author and historian Meenakshi Jain. She is a senior fellow of ICSSR, which is Indian Council of Social Science Research. She has also authored two books, Ram and Ayodhya, and the second, The Battle for Ram. They cover virtually all the aspects of the ongoing Ram Janmabhoomi dispute. So we will be talking about the ongoing dispute that's going on for like 70 years, and we'll try to cover as much base as possible. Good afternoon, ma'am, and welcome to OpIndia.
Thank you.
So before we start, could you please tell the viewers what is this whole issue of Ram Janmabhoomi? Because many of them confuse with whether it has to do with existence of Ram itself, or is it a land dispute, and how this has all panned out, and how do you see it? How are you going to make people understand what's this all thing about?
Yeah, so I will just give a brief history of this controversy. This controversy started with the destruction of a temple at that site in 1528 by the Mughal Emperor Babur. After that, we have consistent accounts of what is happening at that site beginning with 1604. In 1604, we have an Englishman, William Finch. He comes to India and he visits Ayodhya, and he says that over there people are coming to the Saryu river, having a dip, and there are Brahmins at Ram Court, Ram's castle, who record the names of the pilgrims who come there. Now this account is very important because it makes no mention of namaz, and it does not refer to Muslim presence at all.
Yes.
So this is the first account that we have, and William Finch did not know that it was going to become such a controversy 3 centuries later. So he just wrote on the basis of what he saw.
Yes.
So we cannot say that it's a biased account. The second account that we have is of a Jesuit father, Joseph Tiffentheller. He stayed in India for 40 years, and in fact he died in India also, and he stayed in Awadh for about 7-8 years. Joseph Tiffentheller's account is extremely important because he says there is a Vedi in that complex. What is Vedi? Vedi is Bedi, or what we say in Hindi, पालना. पालना किसको कहते हैं? पालना न्यू बॉर्न बेबी के लिए हम क्रेडल कहते हैं. So this is a very, very significant account, and apart from that, Joseph Tiffentheller says that on Ram Navami, lots and lots of people come, pilgrims come, and they do parikrima around that place. Now, since we want to know what the controversy is about, I would like to tell your viewers that from 1604 until 1989, when the left historians jumped into the controversy, every evidence that we have says that the Babri Masjid was built on the destruction of a temple. And if I can just add one more thing, the first account that we have by a Muslim is the Mutawalli, or the superintendent of Babri Masjid. So he files a case in the Faizabad district court soon after the Great Revolt of 1857.
Okay.
And he says in that revolt that 25 Nihang Sikhs from Punjab have entered Babri Masjid, the masjid, not the compound, and masjid itself, and they have started Havan and Puja, and they've erected a chin of Bhagwan, and with koila, charcoal, they have written Ram Ram on the walls.
Okay.
But what is very significant from the discussion that we are having, in his appeal, he calls this masjid Janam Sthan. Now, why would a Mutawalli of Babri Masjid call it Masjid-e-Janam Sthan? No other masjid in India is called Masjid-e-Janam Sthan. So that name itself is a giveaway.
Now, continuing on the same topic, but in a different way, uh, how do you see the historicity of Bhagwan Ram? And how do you see the myth and what is perhaps wrongly understood as mythology in Hindu context? When we talk about Hindu scriptures and text, is it history, is it fiction? How do you see it?
See, the answer to this question is very simple. All courts in the colonial period and independent India, they have been unanimous. There has been no disagreement at any time by any court. And they have said that it is not for the judiciary, it is not for the judicial system to subject the faith of the people to judicial or scientific scrutiny. This is not their business. They have said it. And they said the court only has to take note of the fact that millions believe it so.
Okay.
And that is why the Allahabad High Court did not ask for proof that Ram was born at that particular spot.
Yeah.
They said for us, it is important to note that millions believe it so. So, we cannot question the faith of millions, and that is why we give the central tone.
You talked about the left historians jumping into this whole dispute. So, please tell us about some sane voices among the left historians who are logical, though it is an oxymoron.
It's a very difficult question for me to answer, and I don't think I can answer it. But what I want to say is that till 1989, all evidence that we have, all literary evidence, all accounts, everybody was unanimous that Babri Masjid was built on the site of a temple. Now, in 1949, that is when the left jumps into this controversy. 1989.
Yeah.
And that is when they produced their first monograph on this debate. And after that, the left historians have been consistent that they have questioned the authenticity of the belief that that was Ram's birthplace. They have questioned the fact that a temple was destroyed. In fact, there is one archaeologist, K.K. Mohammed.
Yes.
K.K. Mohammed has written his autobiography recently. And in that autobiography, he says that when this controversy came to the fore, there was a strong section of the Muslim community which said we should hand over this site to the Hindus because it doesn't mean much for us, but it is so important for them. And he records that it was the left historians who jumped in and told the Muslims that you have a very strong case, don't surrender, we will give you the evidence. So this is, I mean, to talk about a sane voice among the left, there must be many sane voices on other aspects. But among the historians, left historians who got involved in this controversy, they were unanimous that Babri Masjid was built on vacant land. They refused to believe that it was built on the ruins of a temple. So they were unanimous on this. I must clarify that all those left historians who got involved in this controversy, so they were unanimous on this. I don't know what the opinion of other scholars were who were not involved in this controversy.
The main arguments of Muslim side in the court, besides adverse possession and potential communal violence that might follow if it swings other way, is that A, in Ayodhya, how do you know that Ram was born on that particular site itself? And B, the archaeological evidence of a pre-Babri Hindu structure like Sanskrit inscriptions or Hindi iconography below the masjid could have been put there by Hindu laborers working under Muslims. Do any of these hold any water?
Now, as far as Ram was born under the central tomb, I have already answered that question because Supreme High Court and Supreme Courts have said that the people believe it so we are not subjecting that to scientific or judicial scrutiny. Now, when all the evidence that was presented before the Allahabad High Court, judicial accounts, revenue accounts, foreign accounts, they refused to convince left historians that Babri Masjid was built on vacant land. In the face of this determined stand, the Allahabad High Court felt that the only way to resolve this issue was to order excavations at that site.
Mhm.
So it asked the Archaeological Survey of India to carry out excavations at that site. Now you can imagine the atmosphere was so tense, maybe because the left historians realized that something can come up in the excavations.
Yeah.
So what the court did was it laid down very strict guidelines for the ASI to follow.
Mhm.
It said the excavations every day will be conducted only in the presence of representatives from both sides, and every day's findings will be recorded in a register which will be signed by representatives of both sides, so that afterwards nobody can question the findings. In spite of that, the left created created so many hurdles for the ASI to carry out its job.
Yeah.
But in spite of that, the ASI did the excavations, and its report is the absolute clinching evidence that Babri Masjid was not built on vacant land.
Yeah.
No, but the thing is that the ASI excavations revealed something which none of us could have imagined.
Mhm.
What did the ASI excavations revealed? They revealed continuous occupation of that site from the 2nd millennium BC. Second, that site was never used for habitational or residential purposes. Means that there no house or palace or anything was constructed for human beings. It was always a sacred site. And a series of sacred structures were found at that site, including a circular shrine where the pranal from which the water comes out when you offer, that was intact. Then the Ram Chabutra going back so many levels, a temple of the 10th century which was short-lived. Why was it short-lived? The ASI report is very quiet on this, but we can conjecture that probably it was destroyed in an earlier wave of attacks on temples. And finally the ASI showed that the 12th century temple was destroyed and Babri Masjid was built on that. And in fact, Babri Masjid does not have its own foundations. It is built on the walls of the pre-existing temple. And there is not even a layer of air between the walls of the temple and the Babri Masjid structure.
So, related to the archaeology and excavations, the interesting argument that has popped up in the court from the other side, that archaeology is not an exact science and it can be treated as an opinion at best. That is one of the arguments that they have put. And second is because of the summary of the report was not signed, so that can also be dismissed, and a lot of noise.
Yeah, but I think these arguments are ridiculous. The ASI specified that these are the people who are going to carry out the excavations. The excavation report bears the names of the archaeologists who carried out the excavation. And Supreme Court has now asked that when the hearings are at the absolute ultimate stage, why are you now questioning the authenticity of the ASI report? Why didn't you question the authenticity when the report was presented in 2003? And it formed an important part of the judgment of the Allahabad High Court. So all this time you were quiet. Now when the hearings are coming to an end, now you're questioning the authenticity of the report. So the Supreme Court has, in my opinion, rightly dismissed this attempt to question the veracity of the ASI report at this late stage.
Coming to the left narrative of stating Ram wasn't an ancient Hindu god, and they have also said that his worship started at very late stage, like just 2 centuries ago, where you have traced the origins of Ram Leela to early Islamic period. Can you please elaborate?
Yeah, actually I wish I had bought a photograph of a coin. I think it's the 1st century AD. Where Ram is, it's a big coin, and Ram is shown holding a arrow, bow and arrow, and that is way before this controversy broke out. In my book, I have also, apart from this coin, I have also traced when scenes from the Ramayana began to be presented in art form. So, or in terracotta or on temple sculptures, etc. And the first terracotta piece we have is of Ravan lifting Sita and carrying her away, and Sita is shown throwing her ornament so that it can help.
It can be traced.
Now this is a terracotta, 2nd century BC, I think. Why would anyone make this piece unless he or she knew that anyone who sees it will know this is the scene from Ramayana? So that means Ramayana was well known at that time. And then there are temples which have got full scenes from the Ramayana on the walls. But in the 12th century, 3 big temples were built in honor of Ram, and all 3 had inscriptions saying that they are built in this century, the date is given, by whom and in honor of whom. 2 of those are in Madhya Pradesh, the inscription is still there, and the 3rd was at Ayodhya, where the inscription fell from the walls when the Babri Masjid was demolished in 1992.
Okay. They also say things like Hindus also used to pillage and destroy their own temples when they used to fight among themselves, and they didn't worry much about Islamic desecration of vigrahas. You contend otherwise. What's the basis of their claims, and what's yours?
I cannot say what is the basis of their claim, but I can give you what I have found. See, the first evidence that we have of a Hindu king taking away the image of another Hindu king actually dates to the period of King Kharvela of Orissa. Now, there is an inscription of his that is called the Hathi Gumfa inscription that is still there on a cave near Bhubaneswar. And that inscription says that a Nanda king had attacked my kingdom, our kingdom, and taken away from there a beloved statue of Jinnah. That seems to be a Jain. And he writes in this inscription that I went to the Mauryan palace, invaded the palace, and brought back that image to my kingdom. So neither the Nanda king destroyed that image nor this person. Both regarded it as sacred and both revered it, and there is no question of desecration. So there are many such instances that I can quote, like the Vijayanagar king, Krishna Devaraya. He attacked Orissa and he brought back from there a revered image of Krishna. And that revered image of Krishna he kept in a Krishna temple that he created in his kingdom. So if there are any cases of Hindus destroying, I'm not aware of them. The instances that I am aware of are Hindu kings taking away the image from their enemy, but constructing grand temples for them so that the sacredness of that image can be maintained and continued.
You narrate in a talk an interesting instance when British judiciary does acknowledge that a great injury was done to the Hindus while hearing a late 19th century case of Mahant wanting permission to build a roof over the Hindu area of the Janmabhoomi.
You see, this Ram Chabutra, the Mahants over there, they used to sit in the open. So there was no protection from rain or from sun. So in these adverse climatic conditions, they used to just sit there. And one Mahant appealed to the British courts that on this small Ram Chabutra, this is the size of this Chabutra, can I be allowed to construct a permanent structure so I get relief from rains and sun. And the court, there were 3 judges who gave judgment on this at various stages. And each one, they all agreed that the case is a very valid case, that constructing something on a Chabutra, but they said that this is a very sensitive area. and we recognize your demand, the validity of your demand, but we feel that in this tense atmosphere, in trying to change the status quo, it can lead to riots. But we understand this is a place of great sanctity for you people, and we understand your demand and we sympathize with your demand.
You also talk about tampering with revenue records of the
Yes,
British,
yes, that is.
which originally didn't acknowledge the Masjid and listed the Hindu Mahants as under proprietors.
Yes.
So, what exactly is this tampering?
This actually was discovered, this tampering, this was discovered by the late B.R. Grover, historian B.R. Grover. Now, what happened that the British, they used to prepare systematic revenue records. So, in 1858, they became interested in the revenue of this area because 1857 was the Great Revolt.
Yeah.
So, 1858, they started examining, and the first revenue settlement was done by them in 1861.
Okay.
That revenue settlement does not show Babri Masjid. It does not mention Babri Masjid.
Okay.
It mentions Janamsthan,
Yeah.
and over there it says that it is government land and it is the Mahants are the under proprietors. Now, from 1861 onwards, no person from the Babri Masjid side challenges the British record.
Yeah.
They don't say that where are we. So they are very happy with this. But when this controversy broke out in modern India, modern India means after independence, I assume.
Yeah.
So B.R. Grover found that in the revenue record, wherever Janamsthan is written, somebody has put a asterisk mark and written on top and Babri Masjid.
Okay.
Now, so somebody very important has given access to these documents.
Obviously.
I cannot go to a government office and find revenue records of 1861. I cannot even find last year's records.
Yeah.
How will I know where to go? And then the point is that the forgery was very easily detected because the writing of that original 1861 is very different from,
obviously, 1947.
ink color is different.
Yeah.
And the thickness of the nib is different.
Everything is different.
Everything. So you can make out a forgery. But what was the best part of it was that there were two sets of these documents.
Okay.
So the person who allowed the forgery to be carried out did not realize that there is another set in another office which does not have the forgery.
Okay.
So, I mean, this is the extent to which people have gone to deny the case of the temple.
So, continuing on that, can you please tell our viewers about the role of independent India's government in what transpired on 23rd of December 1949, placing Vigrahas at the Janmabhoomi?
I don't know if the government had any role at all, to be very frank.
Okay.
I do know that the idols were placed under the central dome, and I don't think that I mean, I cannot say if the government had any role on it or not, but I do know that when the news reached Jawaharlal Nehru, his first reaction was, it will affect our relationship with Pakistan.
Wow.
And that letter of his is there. So he was worried that it will affect our relations with Pakistan and the Kashmir situation.
Okay. You also talk about Mr. Kunal Kishore and the leftist mix-up of the two inscriptions of Vishnu Hari inscription and Tretaka Thakur inscription.
Now I'll just explain this to your viewers in a little bit of detail, if you don't mind, because they should not get confused. When Babri Masjid was demolished in December 1992, then from the walls of the masjid, an inscription fell to the ground. That inscription was a big inscription, 5 feet by 2 feet. Okay, and at that time, when the masjid was demolished, the entire media of the world was there, and there were thousands or lakhs of people. So the inscription gave the date, who constructed it, and all the exact details. So you can imagine 5 feet by 2 feet is going to be a big inscription. So this was, we thought, clinching proof. Masjid, wo inscription mil gaya. But then left historians, and here I will say the principal role was played by Professor Irfan Habib.
Okay.
Now, Professor Irfan Habib wrote an article that this inscription did not fall from the masjid.
Okay.
It was planted there. Now, the question is, when thousands of people are there, chota inscription hota, one can understand. But a 5 feet by 2 feet inscription, how can it be planted there when thousands of people are there, media is there, everybody is there?
In that charged up
Atmosphere. This was the first question. Second question was, if it was brought, where was it brought from? So first he said that it was in a private collection,
Okay.
and then it was brought there. But then asked who was the owner of that private collection, we should have some details. So he modified his view,
Okay.
and he said this inscription was stolen from Lucknow Museum.
Okay.
Now, Lucknow Museum,
They will have a record of that.
so he said this was stolen from Lucknow Museum. Now, most of us could not get access to that inscription in Lucknow Museum, which he said has been stolen and
Okay.
taken to Ayodhya. But Kishore Kunal was a very senior official in the Prime Minister's office monitoring Ayodhya.
Okay.
So he had the official power to go to Lucknow Museum, and he is the person who has published the photograph of that Lucknow Museum. And that's a very important contribution that has been made, because that photograph is just nowhere near the inscription that has been
It was
found.
Okay.
And people who have read that inscription that is in Lucknow Museum, you cannot make out, because it's so badly fragmented, you cannot make out what it is.
Okay.
Whereas the inscription found at Ayodhya gives the details of that temple and the name of the ruler and the year in which it was done. The inscription in Lucknow Museum is badly fragmented. You can only read 2-3 words in that.
Okay.
So this was, I don't think anyone thought that Kishore Kumar would actually reach Lucknow Museum, get a photograph and expose this whole untruth that the Masjid inscription was stolen. It was not stolen at all, and the history of the temple it gives.
Okay. And a logical question that would come to mind to a layman, what if Treta Ka Thakur inscription,
Yes.
that was the Janmabhoomi temple?
The inscription that is there in Lucknow Museum is from the Treta Ka Thakur temple.
Okay.
So that inscription was found by British archaeologists in the colonial period called Fura.
Okay.
So Fura found this inscription in the temple,
Okay.
in the ruins of the temple. So he sent it to the Faizabad Museum, and when the Faizabad Museum at a later stage sent it to Lucknow Museum. So Treta Ka Thakur was a temple that was destroyed on Aurangzeb's orders.
Okay.
And that inscription is very much in Lucknow Museum. It bears no resemblance with. It's very interesting that the inscription on the Ayodhya temple was found in the walls of the Babri Masjid,
Yeah.
and Treta Ka Thakur was found in the ruins of
The temple.
temple.
Okay.
So that means that all the temples at that point, whenever they were constructed, they had inscriptions giving details of that temple.
Yeah. Now again switching to left historians' campaign against ASI, and recently a report, historians' report to Nation from them was dismissed as opinion by
Yes,
the court,
yes.
as it came to notice. 2 didn't even sign it, and the other 2 never even went to Ayodhya, and they said that we were in a haste, we were told to prepare.
Yes. See, that report was dismissed long ago. It has no credibility because it is just prejudice.
Okay.
It is not scholarship. But the Supreme Court was very, very curt in dismissing. It was very clear that it is opinion, not facts. And as you said, they had hardly gone to Ayodhya, and one of them said that we had to write it in a hurry, so we couldn't do proper excavations at Ayodhya. But you know what I want to tell you, the discussions that are taking place in the Supreme Court now, some of the questions that have been raised by the Supreme Court are very interesting.
Yeah.
The Supreme Court dismissed this historian's report to the nation, opinion, not facts. The Supreme Court also asked, that in 1858, the British, they constructed this wall, this railing between the masjid and the compound, so that the Hindus don't get access to the masjid. Now the Supreme Court asked this very interesting question and very revealing question: why is it that the Ram Chabutra has been built just next to the railing, and why is it that the Ram Chabutra has been built at a place where you get direct darshan of the central dome?
Okay. Yeah.
So these are questions for which the opposite party or the opposing party has not been able to provide any answer. See, they just give their opinions, but when they are confronted with facts, they just avoid a comment on that.
Okay. Can you tell us something about the big four of the left historians? Who they are, from where do they derive their power and authority? Do you have any idea why they never come to court themselves and send their students have been visiting
this was a part of a strategy that Irfan Habib, Romila Thapar, R.S. Sharma and D.N. Jha, okay, they would prepare the historian's report to the nation. So all these documents they prepared, all the newspaper articles, and they carried out the proper campaign outside the court. They conducted, and I think it was a calculated decision on their part that they themselves will not go in court. But when you say that they will send their students were also professors, and none of these people was a specialist on medieval India. They Irfan Habib was on economic history of but Romila Thapar, R.S. Sharma, D.N. Jha, they were all ancient India professors. And so they sent their students who were also by now professors. And many of their students in court, they had to admit that they had never studied the Ayodhya phenomena. They had not read Babarnama, they had not visited Ayodhya, and they were totally unaware of the dimensions of this debate, and they had formed their opinion on the basis of historians' report to the nation and newspaper articles. That way I must credit S.P. Gupta, B.R. Grover, Harsh Narayan, and of course B.B. Lal, who started the whole thing, that they marshaled the documents and the evidence in a real masterly way. Of course, the leading light of it was B.B. Lal, who was the first person to say that there is a temple beneath Babri Masjid, but he also said you can carry out excavations without demolishing the masjid.
Now, how have the courts, both High Court and Supreme Court, viewed this leftist campaign? Have they ever in the court itself recognized this fact that you are trying to derail the whole proceedings?
I think because of the paucity of time, the Supreme Court's observations have been more pointed and very scathing as far as the left interventions have been concerned. The Allahabad High Court had been judging this or hearing this case for God knows how many years. So they were given a very patient hearing over there. But the patient hearing is like giving someone a long rope to hang yourself with. So that they were given a patient hearing, and that hearing only exposed. Now, for example, I'll give you one example, that when the ASI excavations began, and it was very clear that there is a structure beneath Babri Masjid, then the left historians, they modified their stand and they said there's an Eidgah beneath the Babri Masjid. So the court said that till now you never said, till now you were saying it is built on vacant land. Now you have changed your view. So this was, one expression of how it was, they were not going to be convinced by any fact. It was their line that they are going to deny the existence of a temple, and they went to any length, whether it was ASI excavations or anything. And just one more thing that I want to say, all the works that were written in the 18th and 19th century in Arabic, Persian and Urdu, they all said that Babri Masjid is built on the site of the Ram temple. All of them. And when this evidence was produced before Irfan Habib, he said this is a communal atmosphere had been created in colonial times. So this is a reflection of the communal atmosphere. But none of the works in Arabic, Persian or Urdu written till the 19th century said that Babri Masjid was built on vacant land. They said it's built on the ruins of the Ram temple.
Have you ever been asked by the Hindu parties to appear on their behalf as an expert, or like the leftists have placed their?
No, the thing is that when the proceedings were going, when the Allahabad High Court was examining this, then I had not studied this phenomena in great. I studied it only after the Allahabad High Court gave its judgment, and the Supreme Court will now not take any new evidence or new witness. They're just wanting.
It is an appellate.
Yes.
Okay. While acknowledging clearly that it is court's prerogative to, tell what's what, means who is going to get the land. What's your professional opinion on this whole issue? Do Muslims have any righteous claim on it? How do you see it?
I just want to say one thing before I answer your question. In land dispute, after 12 years have passed, you cannot challenge whoever is in occupation of that land.
Okay.
Now, the Babri Masjid filed an appeal only 5 days before the 12-year period was going to be over. So, if they had waited for 5 more days, they could not file that. So, this is how, that means what prompted them? This is something that needs to be answered. What made them file a case after 12 years, just 5 days before the time limit?
Okay.
There has been no answer to this question.
You talked about publishing houses explicitly rejecting, pro-temple books and.
Well, I think that I don't think I would like to say something on record on this, but you can just on your own look at how many books were published in favor of the temple.
Okay.
And who were the publishers?
Okay.
Who were the publishers?
Yeah. I try to.
Yeah, because that's something worth investigating.
Yeah.
And you asked me, what did you ask me? What is my view?
Yeah.
See, it is not a question of my personal view. I have come to my view on the basis of all the evidence that is available. The Babri Masjid party has not been able to explain why there is no reference to namaz in 1604, why there is no reference in Stephen Theller's account, and why the first letter by the Mutawalli Babri Masjid in 1858 says it is Masjid-e-Janamsthan. So, all the evidence leads to a natural conclusion. You don't have to be, advocating something. You have to let the evidence speak for itself.
Yeah. Now, I would be asking you some questions that has come from our social media users when we told them that we will be interviewing you. The first question is from Twitter user Ram. He's asking you, are you doing some kind of research on Mathura and Kashi temples as well?
I am.
Okay.
I am. I've made my preliminary study.
Okay.
And the findings are absolutely fascinating, but I cannot disclose them prematurely.
Okay.
But it's fascinating.
Okay. Another from Twitter user Su Chen. How do we get many more Meenakshi Jains like you, raising Hindu or Indic voices in academia? Left has an entire system.
Yes, but I just want to say from my own experience, it's a very difficult and lonely path.
Okay.
Because in spite of the changes that may have taken place at the political level, academically, the left still remains dominant. The publishing houses are still under their sway. You will not find any publisher, leading publisher, willing to accept a book which goes against the left, and you will not find, you will not make many friends in the academic community if you want to take such a line as I have taken. I can speak from my own experience.
Another user, Ram Krishna, asks, does the presence of BJP at the center and most of the states in India, means they are in a seat of authority now, does it give some kind of support system to alternate historians like you who are choosing another path?
See, as a academic, one does really not look for government patronage or support. You have to have the courage to stand alone, and I have never looked for government support or got it. I don't know about the experience of others.
Okay. Final question is from Anupam Kumar Singh. He says that ASI's report talks about presence of elements of decidedly Hindu iconography, like the lotus, Varaha Murti, Ashtakon. How much does this add to the gravitas of the Hindu side?
See, the findings of the ASI, actually they have listed them in their report. Parts of specifically Hindu temples. There are about 250 items that they have discovered, and if you look at the ASI report, they are listed over there, because everything that they found they had to list. So it's all mentioned in the ASI report. A detailed account is given of every little thing that they found there.
Okay. So what is the legality of the arguments like lotuses are not, exclusive to Hindu iconography?
This is ridiculous.
Or these are toys.
You see, the point is, when you have lost everything, then you just clutch at straws. Anything that you think, but it doesn't hold any water anywhere.
So it is, in a way, in fact, one of the judges also observed that you guys are repeatedly saying the same things again and again. Why don't you come up with something new?
Absolutely.
So it is just delaying tactics.
Yes, I thought that the some of the points that the Supreme Court made were very apt and really required to be made. Of course, I am not prejudging the judgment. We are all waiting with bated breath for the judgment to come, and we hope that the evidence is allowed to speak for itself.
Okay, Meenakshi ji, it has been a pleasure talking to you.
Thank you.
Hopefully after the judgment comes, we'll have a chat with you.
Thank you. Thank you so much.